Disclaimer: the information provided on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered as financial advice. We are not licensed financial professionals, and any opinions shared are based on personal experiences and research. As always, do your own due diligence and consult with a certified financial advisor or professional before making any investment decisions. All right, everyone, welcome back. So thank you. Here we are, episode 6. So this episode is going to be based around a financial duo, so a partnership with your partner. So if you look at the statistics and you look at the studies, there's a lot of information out there on why finances lead to divorce or breakup. And a lot of it you'll hear throughout the video when it comes to like financial trauma, when it comes to, pride, when it comes to just being secretive, lack of communication. So all of this factors in, and we're just going to break down the numbers on how, keeping finances away from your significant other is actually more harmful than it is good. So we're going to start the episode off with 2 articles that I saw. So we'll kind of break down the statistic I found from Bankrate. So according to Bankrate, 42% of couples actually keep their finances a secret from one another. So I wanted to do some more digging on that because I did find that number very interesting. And I actually went to New York Times and I found an article through New York Times advising that the reason why couples keep their finances a secret because they anticipate conflict. So due to financial trauma or where the case may be, maybe it's a pride thing, who knows? But, with that trauma comes the conflict because now you're not having those conversations regularly. So you may get mad or upset when you find out how much debt that your partner truly has. This can lead to even further arguments. So, it's always good to have conversation about money and always make sure that you're on top of your budget because then you don't want to keep snowballing your way into debt. And the quickest way to do that is to not follow your budget and to not talk to your spouse about certain items. So you guys are going to have different goals in life probably for most of the case, right? But maybe you guys do want to buy that home. Maybe you guys do want to level up the house. In order to do that, it comes with constant communication. It comes with understanding each other, trying to find a middle ground. So, try to build those habits and start small. So, during the New York Times article, it did say, you two need to start building those habits, but you can start small. So, how you guys can do that, sit down together and go through what you guys spend a month and, try not to make it like a conflicting conversation, which can be easier said than done. But try to make it to where, it's like, okay, here we are, right? We're here. Where can we go? It can only, if we don't fix our habits now, it can get worse. If we start today, it can only get better. So sit down, see what you can save, see what you can cut, start talking about maybe saving for the vacation. So that way you don't have to use a bunch of debt for the whole vacation. And by having these conversations and sitting down and, if you are more advanced financially to your partner, sit down and try to educate them. Again, you guys are in a partnership. So the more that you know together, the easier your partnership is going to be. All right. So this is where you get your notes out because did you know that the divorce rate in America is between 40 and 50%? Crazy. So that basically 1 out of 2 marriages will fail, right? So according to Google, also when it comes to financial situations and financial problems, this is about 20 and 30% for the reason why people get divorced. And one of the highest indicators of that was the high interest loans. So this may be like the high interest debt credit card, the high interest consolidation loan, the high interest car payment, whatever the case may be, right? So, we're here, again, how I mentioned earlier in the episode, it's always good to have that constant communication. But to be honest with you, like, if we're getting serious to the point where, like, we're taking it to the next level, like, we're beyond that, like, dating phase, essentially, then, yeah, I'm going to sit down and have a conversation, beforehand. Because I'm going to be open and honest. This is the debt that I have. This is what I'm working for. This is my 5, 10, 15-year goals. I want to make sure that our goals can align. And, for me, it's like, when I met my wife, I didn't have the best money habits, right? So it was hard to teach her things that I did not know. And the more I'm looking into it, the more I'm actually having these conversations now and actually sitting down and showing her what I'm seeing. And then now she's actually picking up some habits that I built along the way, which is starting to work for her, right? So, as I said, we're still in our early phases as well. We're still trying to pay down our high interest consumer debt. We're trying to, take take our money to the next level, have our dollars work for us, essentially. So that's one thing that we're working towards. It's not going to happen overnight, and that's something that we understand, but we would have never got to this point if we didn't start talking about it, start communicating about it. And that's what I said earlier in the video, is don't let it try to be a conflicting conversation, right? Because a lot of times when it's conflicting, pride is in the way. Try to have a conversation where you're understanding, like, look, if you love this person, I understand, debt is debt. But if you love this person and they come to you and then you find out, that their debt is that, sky high, if your relationship's good, are you going to end it for that? Or are you going to sit there and, try to help each other out? This is where it comes up time to make that decision. Like, is this the person that I'm going to be with? If it's the person that I'm going to be with, then yeah, let's work this thing out. Let's, make a better life for each other. And that way, maybe when we're in our 40s, we're in our 50s, we're living life. Our money's making more than what we can make annually. That's the ultimate goal. So, it just takes time. It takes constant communication, like I'm going to say throughout this video here. And, you always want to try to find a middle ground that works. Whether if you're like the breadwinner, whatever the case may be, you still need to find a middle ground, because it's not that, your partner should dictate what you're doing, but you should have that respect and that understanding to go to your partner and have these conversations before maybe buying a big purchase. Like, to me, a big purchase for me would be anything over like $150. Because I'm going to have that conversation, whether if I can afford it or not. I'm still going to have that conversation with you, just let you know, like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Because you don't want to get into a situation where, you're spending above that, right? Maybe you drop $300 on something that you absolutely do not need. And then, your partner may not approve of that. But, instead of having that conversation beforehand to let them know, like, hey, I saved for this. I worked hard for this. I'm going to get this. There could have been a priority where it's like, hey, maybe we can, pay this off with that money, or maybe we can actually get X, what we're both expecting to get. And that's a decision that you're going to have to decide if you're going to take, that what you've both been working towards or what you essentially want. And ultimately, like, I feel like for me, a lot of things that I want can ultimately wait. Like, if I know that we can put that money somewhere else, then yeah, I'm going to use that delayed gratification, because I understand that maybe if we're chipping this away, I'll have more money coming in monthly to where I can actually go ahead and get what I want to get, whether if it's now or whether if it's in a couple months. So those are the decisions that you essentially have to make. But, either way, you should really talk to your partner about it, so that way it doesn't come conflicting later on. Because, like, it's like, hey, we had this conversation. This is what I have. This is what I'm telling you I'm doing. I'm being open and honest with you. So, this is what I've worked for. Or you can say, you're right. Like, I can, let's go ahead. Let's do this. And, next time I'll get this $200-$300. I'll get what I want. I'll work towards it. Because you already got it once. You know how to get it. You already saved it once. So you already saved up to $200-$300. So you can do it again to get something that you want, right? So, same thing applies. Like, if you saved it up in 3-4 months, what's another 3 to 4 months to saving up and get what you want? So, it's all about having those constant communication conversations, and it's all about, making that gut decision at the end of the day. But, end of the day, you should be respectful about it. And for the partner that they're coming to you about this, big purchase, understand that they work every day just like you. Understand that they want to reward themselves, just like you want to reward yourself. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just understand that, we all have things that we want in life, but at the end of the day, you both do. If you both do, situations are different. My situation, we both work, but, if they want to treat themselves, they can afford it, have at it. Treat your relationship like a partnership when it comes to finances. I know it's crazy to say that, I can't believe you're saying that you should treat your relationship like a business. But essentially, when it comes to partnerships and it comes to relationships, that's one of the biggest financial commitments that you're ever going to make in your life. When it comes to being married or come to, being together on a more serious level, that's a very big financial decision you're going to make in your life. Just like having a kid, these are very big financial decisions as well. So the reason why I say you should, run your relationship like a partnership when it comes to finances is because what makes a great partnership, right? So what makes a great partnership is learning from each other, leaning on each other, learning how to communicate with an open mind, learning how to meet in the middle, holding each other accountable, being respectful towards each other, and both having a passion and drive to achieve the same goals. Like that to me is what makes a strong partnership. And why can't you incorporate that into your relationship? So to me, it doesn't have to be like a business structure, but the mindset of it should be, if I were in a business, this is how I would want my ideal partner to be, and this is what my ideal partner would want to do. And this is what I'm going to carry over into my relationship moving forward based off the information that I have gained and learned over the past couple of years when I started this journey. So, again, like a relationship, especially a marriage, like that's your biggest number one financial commitment. And you need to seriously consider that this is the person for you. You need to seriously consider that y'all can sit down and have these financial conversations, because they say, finance, money doesn't bring you happiness. Well, sure do bring you comfortability. And at some point, money does essentially have to pay for happiness. Does it bring you genuine happiness? No. But is it a happy feeling when I can do things with my family, when I can sign my kid up, when we could go on these trips, when we could go do things together that's not in town? Like, yeah, that makes me pretty happy. So, yeah, it doesn't buy you happiness, but it can definitely buy you security and make you happy. And this is going to be, again, a financial commitment, because this is something that you're signing off of longer than what you expect to pay your mortgage on. You guys want to essentially live your life out together. But as you can see, 40-50% of the time that does not happen, and 20-30% of the time is really just because there's a lack of understanding of finances and a lack of communication between the two when it comes to finances. Like, I would feel some type of way too if we're together for years and we try to have conversations about money, but it really always turns into an argument, or it never goes as planned. And next thing you're just keep racking up debt, and I'm not knowing about it. Like, yeah, that will sit with me a little differently, because you're not willing to just even hear me out. Now, if you're willing to hear me out and we're just like in a financial situation, a financial crisis, and we're trying to dig our way out, maybe it's okay to get a professional to come help us out. Get a professional to help the two of you out, right? So, it's all about building together and trying to understand each other. And money does play a part into that, because I need to understand your goals and I need to understand how to get there. Don't come to me talking about I want to move or buy my first house in 5 to 10 years and we're not changing our money habits. How? What are we going to save up? What's our target goal? What's our year? How much can we save up in a month? Is this even a realistic goal? Like, don't come to me with just that goal. Just, I want to move in 5 to 10 years. Show me how. Show me the numbers. Show me what we would have to actually save for that to happen. And a lot of times, a lot of people may feel some type of way about a prenup. But again, this is all, case by case, all situation by situation. I don't personally look at a prenup as like I'm thinking divorce. I'm just thinking, when I think prenup, when people want to get prenup, it's like an insurance policy, right? So it's just like, I don't drive every day thinking, oh, I'm going to get into a car accident today. Like, no, in the event that I do get in a car accident, I'm protected through my insurance. And, to me, a prenup is eventually the same thing. And who knows, right? What if you sign that prenup? What if that person is making X amount of dollars in you and something happens? Life happens, right? So what? Now you're the breadwinner. Now you're protected, right? If in the prenup it's saying that, you guys are going to split your assets, whatever the case may be, your name's not on those medical bills. So, again, it can go one or two ways. So that's why I typically don't look at it like a bad thing. But overall, I believe that you should treat it like a partnership, because really good partnerships, they grow and they blossom based on the habits that they have within the partnership and based on the common goals and passion that they have about what future that they envision their life or business to be. All right, so we're about to talk about a nice spicy conversation here. I actually got this because my boy shared a Dave Ramsey video with me, and we actually had a really good conversation about it. So this is basically if you should have joint accounts versus having a separate account with you and your partner. according to experts like Dave Ramsey, they believe that you should have a joint account because that creates constant communication. That's going to make you ensure that you're seeing what's coming in and out the account, which me personally, before I even give my opinion, I think either idea, whatever works for your relationship works for you. You just got to be honest, genuine, respectful for each other, and understand each other. So and have that constant communication. As long as you got all those, to me, it doesn't matter if it's joint, if it's separate, like whatever. But I kind of agree to disagree, because I agree, yes, it makes sure that you are being honest and fair with your money, because you could both see what's coming in out of the account, right? So you can get on your mobile app. You both have different lock credentials, see the same account. All right, cool, I get that. But, it's the divorce rate still, 20-30% of the divorce rate is due to financial, drama, situations, whatever the case may be. To me, you can have a joint account, but it doesn't mean you understand money. That doesn't mean that you guys actually have a plan in place. That doesn't mean that you guys actually have a budget in place. That just means you can see, each other's account. Doesn't even mean you're really communicating, because I can see what we're coming out the account. I can't see what's coming out your credit cards. I can't see what loans that you're applying for, technically, unless something were to come in the mail and I were to open the mail. So, to me, it really depends on your situation. And also, there's pros to a joint account. There's a lot of cons too. So put it this way. Let's just say, maybe we've actually been, married 20 years. There's a thin line between love and hate. It's a really thin line. You can love someone for years and they can really do you wrong. And that love's going to turn to hate. And you're going to do things maybe you never thought you would do in your life. So put it this way. Let's just say maybe there's $40,000 in a high yield savings account, $50,000. I mean, you see people with $80,000. These are realistic numbers when you get to about that point. You're 20 years deep into your marriage, right? So, a lot of times that may sound like a realistic number depending on your financial habits. And you guys go through the divorce process, whatever the case may be. Something got ugly. So, someone did whatever, maybe it was something stupid. And your partner goes in, wipes out $40K. Boom, joint account, $40K, wipe. You don't call your bank, brokerage account. Well, hey, look, their name's on that account too. They get 50-50 assets, 50-50 liability. So, hey, they're entitled to every dollar. To the bank, don't matter if they put 1 cent in or not. To the bank, they're entitled to every dollar. And right now, you're out of $40K while you're going through a divorce. So maybe you do need it. Maybe you did need some of that money to, help you get a new place or whatever the case may be. And all that's wiped. They're chilling on it. Now, you can still go through the court process. You can still go, civil court and things like that. But that's a whole different conversation. That's more on the legal aspect. I'm not here on the legal aspect. I am here to know that, your bank will definitely tell you that, hey, nothing we can do for you. Sorry. That's just what it is. And also, let's just say your partner was active in fraud, whether if they know it or not. Let's just say they were active in fraud and they cost the bank $5,000, right? Through being a participant in fraud. And your partner's like, I'm not paying that. Well, guess what? Someone got to pay it. Someone owes the bank. If the bank deem that you were part of the activity, why would they cover that on their end, right? So why would they pay for your activity? No, you're going to be entitled to pay that back in some way, shape, or form. So if your partner's like, well, I'm not paying it, you're going to have to pay it. Essentially, if you don't want it to hurt your credit, if you don't want it to, ding your credit, if you don't want to have collections go to your credit. So just because it's a checking account or, doesn't matter. They can go to collections and collections can get sold off. And once collections get sold off, then you're really screwed. So, there is pros and there is risk to it. So I just wanted to lay that out. Now, for me and what we do is we do it a little different. So, yes, I have a check that goes to my account. My wife has a check that goes to her account. And we have a bill account. So we take those individual accounts and whatever our bills come through for the next 2 weeks, that's what we put into that account. And then whatever we do with the rest of the money is on us. So, right now we're working on towards paying debt. So that's where a lot of our extra cash has been going to. But hey, like whatever we do, that's on us. Like how you have your bills structured, how you have how we have our bills structured, it don't really matter. A lot of times they may not be 50-50 in bills. One time you may be doing 70-30, 60-40. Whatever the case is, maybe you're doing 100-0 because they're a stay-at-home parent. Like, either way, you still have to have, that understanding, have that conversations. So my wife knows that I'm going to pay the bills. I'm going to put money aside. $700 is going to include gas, groceries, entertainment, and food. And then I'm going to put whatever I have left is going to go towards any debt that I may have. And she kind of follows suit. She kind of does the same thing. And we trust each other with that. And if my wife really wanted to see what I'm spending, she can go look and see what I'm spending on. So like there's nothing essentially to hide, because again, I learned how to have that conversation, that communication, that respect, about saying, I'm very open about my finances, because to me, in my head, I have to be open to my finances, because one, that eliminates conversation or argument, because now you know exactly what I'm spending and I'm letting you know what I'm doing. Two, and make sure that I'm still on path with what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to overspend. I'm trying to save, trying to do X, Y, and Z, trying to get this debt paid down. And three, it allows her to still have that trust that, okay, this is what, the money's going to, instead of just, going to, I don't know, sports betting or something like that, right? Like it's actually working for itself in a meaningful way. So that's exactly what I mean. Again, it's your money. You could technically do with whatever you want with your money. You can technically do whatever you want, but there's consequences to any action that you make. So you just got to live and be ready for those consequences. All right. So overall, like my final thoughts and opinion, it don't really matter, what I would think about your situation. Really, it's all just about being honest, about being open to the conversation, about being genuine to helping each other, because it's going to, marriage is a very long time, or it's supposed to be a long time, and there's a lot of ups and downs that come in life. So, this is going to be your partner, and a lot of times you're really not where you're at without having a strong partner by your side. So with that being said, that comes with an understanding from both sides. So, have those conversations, just be honest with each other, be realistic, have a budget in place with each other, and set realistic goals and make them detailed. So if you two want to go on vacation, and the vacation's like, let's just save $1,000 to start, right? All right, well, how are you going to get to the 1,000? You hear me say this all the time, right? Don't tell me you're going to, save 1,000. Tell me that you're going to put $100 aside for 10 months to get to $1,000 to be ready for the trip next year. So that is the mindset that you want to have when it comes to starting to build. Have those conversations when you're going to do big spending. Again, I'm a firm believer that, you work hard for your money, so that's your money, but you still need to have that constant communication and understanding for each other. If a separate account works for you, great. If a joint account works for you, great. Again, to me, none of that really matters if you don't have the financial understanding or have the willingness to hear each other out when it comes to finances. Again, if you're going to, bring this to the table, make sure you bring numbers, make sure you bring facts, make sure that you've done your research on it, right? Because you don't want to set both of you guys up for failure. You don't really want to set up something that can really derail all the hard work that you put into. But all of it simply starts with change. So, last thing I'll say is, if you're in a really great spot looking to take the next step, or if you're just getting started, you have a lot of debt, you don't know where to go, you don't know maybe what you're doing, either way, get a financial advisor, get a pro to help you. That's their job. That's what they're here for. These are people who can really steer you in the right direction to help you achieve the goals that you may have. So again, along the way, when it comes to both of you, lost dollars are going to turn into learned lessons. Nothing is going to be perfect out of this, but it's all about just making sure that I can have this conversation and I can come to my partner about what my spending plan is about to be, or what the purchase I'm about to do, and making sure it's a healthy conversation. So that's all. Thank you all for joining here for me for another episode. Have a good day.